welcome to The Backline with Rob and Adam. My name is Rob Norman. I'm author of the improv book, Improvising Now.
And my name is Adam Cawley, alumnus of the Second City Main Stage.
Adam, we are at the end of an incredible season here at The Backline. How are you, my friend?
I'm great. I think it's been like the best improv year since the pandemic, right? There's been a lot of dipping our toes into live performances, going back to online stuff, theaters opening, theaters closing, theaters kind of opening. So this has felt like the most normal in terms of improv life since 2019, I think.
So you're saying the pandemic, which for us pretty much ended a year ago. Since the pandemic ended, this has been the best year since the pandemic ended for improv.
Since the pandemic started.
Oh, I see. Okay, so
There's
you're
been,
saying during the pandemic where we were locked in our houses and we couldn't improvise, you're saying that was worse than now when you can go on stage and improvise and teach classes and stuff.
Yeah, because I know you're not invited to do a lot of shows. People don't want you around. But for me, it was like, hey, the theater's back open. Come do a show. And then you would do it. And then a month later, be like, hey, our theater's closed again because there's a new wave. Hey, the theater's back. Let's all join back in. Ooh, actually, that's canceled. So that kind of back and forth was obviously very frustrating. We had that initial wave of, hey, improv can be online. It can. Okay. And now that's very normal. And we brought back live stuff. And now those two things are happening at the same time. I know people who have, over the pandemic, finished UCB, finished Groundlings, finished the Conservatory, all from a city that has no improv theaters. So, this year for me felt the most normal, as well as we haven't left that online world behind. But there's a nice balance now where it's not unusual to be in a class and be like, oh, hey, I know you. You're from Lithuania and you're from Australia. But then also go to an in-person class and be like, oh, yeah, we all live across the street from the bar.
It's also really interesting. Yeah, you're totally right. And the idea that online classes aren't going away, I think is pretty cool, pretty novel. I mean, we've really figured out there's a way to kind of download a whole bunch of information very quickly from your house. Like, for example, I can't imagine going into a room to learn stand-up. I mean, maybe if you're doing crowd work or something. But for the most part, it's like, oh, we're just going to write jokes. Here's a writing class. Yeah, you probably want to do that online. Unless the theater that you're going to has an incredible, culture, where it's like we go to a writing class, and then we go out for drinks. But unless you're at that theater, which I don't think exists for a writing program, I've never seen students kind of be like, let's hang out for drinks after our class. That's something you could do from home. And you can save 2 hours commuting when you could be using that for writing rather than trying to get to and from a space. For the theaters themselves, you go, oh, well, we just saved a whole bunch of money on renting a space, or now that space can be used for something else that requires in-person attendance. So absolutely, the pandemic did give us online classes, and they're not going away.
And I think this too, you and I experienced this within the last year of meeting people that we know but have never met. But it's like, oh yeah, we've been friends online for years because you took a class or we shared an online show. And it's like, oh yeah, I know you, but I've never met you in person. And now those people are meeting in person. And so it's just it's like I picture like Inception, where like the Paris folds in on itself. And all of the online and live world are now intersecting in a very cohesive way, I think.
We went to Victoria, and there's a team I coach out in Victoria. So everyone was I was really excited to meet them. They're really excited to meet me. We've never met each other in person. And we were on our way to perform our show. And my friend Paul, who's in this troupe, was having dinner with his friends. And I saw him, and I stopped and went, hey, Paul. And he was like, who are you? I'm like, you're about to come watch me perform. We've coached each other. I've coached you for the last, 4 months or something. But in real life, it's very surreal. It's very weird to see people in real life. So there it is. There it is. But we're at the end of our season. Things are ending. Any final thoughts about the year ending? Any reflections that you have for you?
Yeah, I think, I've been, going back and forth, Toronto, Los Angeles. And I think in both cities, Toronto just had their new second city open up. In LA, UCB Franklin opened up. And it feels like, again, pre-COVID, there was a huge amount of allegiance to a theater. It was like you could start to be, oh yeah, Rob's a second city performer for sure. Oh, this person, oh well, they're definitely from this theater. And now, two things happened. One, the pandemic and the closing of theaters forced new venues to now accept comedy, to get excited about doing improv shows. And especially in a town like LA, where if you were aligned with a theater, you never had to worry about producing. That was never on your mind. Find a venue. What are you talking about? I've got the massive complex that is UCB Sunset. I'm a Groundling student. What are you talking about? I'm at Groundlings. And so all of these mini little theaters have started to open up, or bars that are just bars are now like, oh yeah, we have improv 3 nights a week. So it's been the same kind of thing of the online world and the live world intersecting. It feels like now you've got these major theaters, but you also now have these options all around town. And I think people have gotten a little less precious about how they identify as an improviser in terms of partnering with the theater. It's like, oh yeah, I perform here, but I also perform everywhere. And I think the theaters themselves have been a little less precious of like, do whatever you want. We're just happy to be on stage. Like, we want everyone to be good and excited and enjoy this thing. We want audiences to see it. So please pitch us a show. Go perform elsewhere. Learn what it's like to produce your own show, to make a poster, to create a tech sheet. Like, all of that stuff, I think, has been really beneficial to the community at large after a really tough few years.
Yeah, I mean, some big changes there. The idea that you would just kind of fall into an institution and they would take care of you, I mean, maybe that's happening still in Chicago, but I don't think that's happening elsewhere. I mean, big changes all around. I mean, in Toronto at least, Bad Duck lost its space. Second City had to have this massive transition. We just opened up a new space at 1 York Street, which is huge. It's enormous. But during that transition, people were kind of lost, trying to find their way. Where do I fit in? Leadership is constantly changing. And when leadership changes, also does the old guard. People who were like pillars of that community, they get swapped in for people who maybe are more familiar to the people who are kind of running the show. So, yeah, those are some big changes. And yeah, in that mix, there's a lot of opportunity for you to find your own thing. And our experience is actually very similar to that. When we were coming up, Second City went bankrupt, and it left these huge holes that we were able to fill with our own projects. And we ended up creating these these shows that ended up kind of having a life of their own. So I think that's happening probably for a lot of people across North America and maybe even the world.
Yeah, and I think theaters in Chicago and LA have like moved locations, but not nearly what it was like in Toronto. Like, this is, in my improv life, this is Second City's 4th home. Mm-hmm. Like, there was the Fire Hall, there was 56 Blue Jays Way, 51 Mercer, the Comedy Bar East, and now 1 York Street. And all during those times, we had to figure it out. When I was in college, I went to Humber College for Comedy, Writing, and Performance. And we got taught by a lot of Second City alums. We had Second City was a big tie-in there. And part of the draw was that at the end, your big class showcase, like your thesis for comedy, got to be on the Second City main stage. But Second City was closed that year. Second City was bankrupt. And so we didn't get that opportunity. We had to go and do a show at CAMH, which was a mental health hospital. And so we were like, oh, if Second City's not around, we better figure this out on our own. And then it happened again and again. The same with Bad Dog. This is Bad Dog's third home. So I think it's it's crisis leading to opportunity. And I think there's no right or wrong, but to have those skills in your back pocket of, oh shit, I don't have a company to take care of this for me. Can I do this on my own, or will I just give up? And I think having those skills will only serve us going forward.
Well, and also hearing the feedback of saying, hey, we have this company. Do you want to do a show with us? And people going, for what? What does the company give me? Like, unless you are getting a big wad of cash from some kind of government grant, what does the company do? Well, it gathers people together under a banner and you produce shows. Well, I can produce shows on my own. All the spaces are independent. The theater company is renting the theater just like I would, so why don't I just create my own theater company?
Yeah.
Same thing.
I mean, it's the same thing with the big change that happened kind of, 15 years ago, where it was like, oh, I guess I have to get Fox to make a TV show that I can be in. And be like, why don't we just film it ourselves? And be like, oh, you can do that? Well, I guess. They're just doing the same thing. They hire a crew. They hire actors. They hire directors. I think we can just do this. And it's been amazing to watch because you can still be a part of that system and say, well, you know what? I like Second City. I like IO. I like whatever. I'm going to work my way through because that's a goal of mine. But I'm also not going to put all of my improv eggs in that basket. And I'm going to say, if that happens for me, great. If it doesn't, I'm going to make sure that I built my own skills of producing, performing, and keeping my improv reps up so that if it doesn't work out with that theater, I'm fine. It's a bummer, but I'm okay. I can still perform the thing that I love. And if it does work out, then great.
Well, that's great, AC. I love it. I love hearing your feedback. I love hearing the fact that you're going to be back in Toronto for Christmas. Excited to play one last show with you at our Party Hard Party at Comedy Bar West. But we're talking about something different this episode. We're talking about ending scenes, which for the most part is something that we don't really focus on, because if a scene is going well at the beginning, at the start of a scene or a start of a show, then the ending's kind of gravy. It really isn't our problem also if we're the one on stage. Most likely someone's going to sweep, or someone's going to pull lights, or someone's going to tag out. So the endings of improv scenes end up being someone else's problems. However, you and I now know, because we do a kind of improvised one-act play with only two of us, and we're creating a full story here, or a full narrative. In that case, you and I do need to figure out an ending. We do need to wrap this thing up. And so I think this is helpful, even if you're doing a herald, even if the tech guy is going to pull lights for you. It is nice if your scene is driving towards an ending as opposed to treading water until someone interrupts you and ends the thing. So let's talk about it. Endings. Why is it so hard to end a scene?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing I hear when trying to, run workshops or talk about endings or editing, it's I didn't want to end their scene for them.
It's too nice. It's too good.
Oh, it was so good. I didn't want to be the one to end it.
It didn't feel right.
Yeah, I was. I didn't want them to be mad at me. Right? It's so tough. It's like we're taught to be supportive. Right? Our whole thing in improv is I got your back. Trust me. I want to make my partner look good. And then the way I show that is by ending your improv, saying, hey, your time on the improv stage is over now, and I've decided it's over. That's a lot of pressure. And for me as a teacher, I find it even more difficult to explain endings, because you're like, well, there's a lot that goes into it, and part of it is trusting your own instincts. Just because you're not on stage does not mean you're not in the show. And just like when you're on stage, you have to trust your instincts. You've got to listen to your partner, the audience, be aware of time, of how long your show is. So it's a lot of pressure to do that. I always think of like, if you've got a partner, or you're hosting something with other people, that time of the night where you're like, I want everyone to go home now, but I haven't really talked to my partner of like, are we ending this now? And so it's that person who sits up from like the dinner table being like, well, that was great. Thank you all for coming. And people being like, wait a second, I was still having fun. Why are you ending this, Adam? Do you hate us? Do you not like us? You've ended our fun. And I think that's what it feels like for people on the sidelines of, I think this should be over, but I also think it's going great. I don't know what to do and I'm paralyzed.
I mean, this is the joy of being a funny person too, right? Like you're at that party and go, well, I've had enough of this. Bye, everyone. And you get up and leave. And everyone goes, oh, well, it's a joke. But also, Rob's leaving. Cool. And I feel okay. Like there's nothing weird about this because you're skipping over the etiquette piece, the politeness of this. You know, when we think about ending scenes too, we often think about ending scenes from the outside perspective, but we don't often think about them from within the scene. And that's something that I would encourage more people to think about, because it's not just the person sweeping who are ending the scene. You on stage are also contributing to if this scene is going to go on forever or if this scene is driving to an end. We've all felt that feeling of being left on stage for too long. And we always go, why didn't anyone save me? It's someone else's responsibility. But also, you probably weren't doing anything that people could end the scene. It's this weird cycle. Like we've all been caught on stage for too long and we've used all our energy and the scene didn't end. And we went, this is the ending. Oh, no one swept. And we went, you know what? I don't want that to ever happen again. That was embarrassing. So from now on, I'm going to set aside this amount of energy so that if I don't get swept, I can keep going. And so we create these scenes where we're just treading water. We're just continuing the scene so we don't ever feel that embarrassment again. And the truth of the matter is, the only way out of a scene is to break it, is to use up so much energy to make so many things happen that there's nowhere else for it to go. And if you can do that, you're going to end the scene. You're going to pull the lights. You're going to invite a sweep. But I think a lot of the time, we're just kind of staying in a trance on this kind of loop, hoping that we don't get stuck out there for too long.
And I think it's also, if you're in a scene and you have no idea what the show is that you're doing, or there's no context of like, sorry, how long are these scenes? How many scenes are we doing tonight? Like what? It can really mess with the editing of the show. And this is why I always like to ask these kinds of questions before a show. If you're guesting on something or if it's a show you've never done, is making sure that we understand what are the expectations here. Because if the expectations are, okay, guys, this is an 11 p.m. bar prov funny first show, you might get scenes that are 15, 20 seconds. You might get these little blackouts. And ending them there serves the show. But if you have no idea and you're thinking, I love improv. I'd like to be on stage for 12 minutes. I'm going to really take my time. And as you said, that kind of treading water of I'm not heightening. There's no growth in these characters. There's no change. You're making life difficult for not only yourself, because I assume that scene is struggling, but for everybody else of like, you're giving us no indication that this is ending. You're just giving us an indication that I'm going to look at my watch. It's like a movie that you're just like, what? Why is this still happening? But at the end of a movie where you have a character change, you've overcome something, someone has learned a lesson, everybody now is like, well, this is wrapping up. I don't have to look at my watch. I know that this is coming to an end. So if we don't offer that to the people who are going to be editing us, it's going to be quite difficult for them. And then you could understand from being within that scene, being like, why didn't anyone save me? Well, you didn't give them an indication that this was going to be ending anytime soon. And we don't want to look like we have snatched your scene away from you. We want to help you, but it's a compromise between us. You do a little, and I'm on the watch. You do a little more, okay, I'm on a closer watch, and then we work this thing together.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting thinking about, and maybe this is the Toronto mentality, because, you know, there's so many theaters that have so many different ways of working, so many shows that are outside these theaters, indie shows. There's no real, like, artistic director who's in charge of the scene here. It's just a kind of, like, smattering of different point of views. You end up figuring out these kind of heuristic tricks for yourself in playing shows. Like, for example, for a long run, we did these beat prov shows. So it would be like, we're going to do an improvised Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And you would get these beat sheets where you'd say, okay, in this scene, these two characters, character A is going to give this important information about the plot. And that's why this scene exists. Now, you're allowed to improvise around it and do character bits. Well, the thing I discovered really quickly was the scene ends pretty much after you tell the important fact, the plot point. So what I should do is I should put that plot point at the end of my scene. If I do it at the beginning, I'm going to play a 1-minute scene. I want to play a 5-minuter, so I'm going to put it at the end. Like, knowing what kind of show you're doing or how the scene is supposed to work allows you to kind of figure out, oh, I have a strategy here. There's some resource management strategies going on.
It's,
but let's talk a little. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to just to add on to that, like,
Yeah.
thinking now of some of the shows that I've been doing in the last few months. Every theater has a different handle on this. Some have a clock, like a digital clock that you can see from the stage, and you know, well, my show ends in 10 minutes. So depending on what kind of show you are doing, you're now in your scene or in the show on the back line, on the sides, looking at a clock and thinking, I'm now working with the improvisers, but also aware of the time. Other theaters, they have like a stand-up red light. Hey, everyone, I'm the tech here. And when it is 3 minutes before your time's up, I'm putting on that red light. You'll see it. You can start to do whatever you think you need to do to make an ending happen. And lastly, it's just, oh yeah, when your time's up, it's up. We're on a tight schedule here. We want to fit in as many teams as possible. So when 15 minutes hits, I don't care if you're in the middle of a sentence, I am pulling it. Because if I look for a blow for you and it doesn't come for another 2 minutes, then the other teams get less time. So we can't make that happen for you. So there are so many ways now where theaters are kind of manipulating endings or saying, we are a part of this ending too, based on time constraints, based on artistic direction, whatever it may be. So there's so many things that, for me, and maybe this isn't an issue for smaller communities with one theater, but even if you have one theater, every individual show there is probably going to have different ideas of length of scenes, length of the show. Do we have time? Like, is there a show after us? Do we need to end at a specific time, or can we go where the show needs to go? So asking, I think, these questions really helps inform you and your team. What are the editing constraints and what are the guidelines for this next half hour that we are doing?
I mean, there's an interesting dialogue that happens with Loose Moose improvisers and their technical improviser. I think that's the term that they might use out in the West Coast. That the tech person pulls the lights, and sometimes they will wave the lights back up if they don't think their scene is done, and they continue. And so, like, that's like a very normal trope, and it's actually kind of funny too. It's a very short-formy thing to do. It's like not even the definitive light pull is unquestioned. We can say, no, that's a mistake, I'm still going. In Toronto, I mean, oh my gosh, can you imagine if you're playing a show with Mark Andrada and he pulls the lights on you. This Mark Andrada's like known in our city for being like the tech guy. He's a clown and an improviser, a comedian himself. So he understands the arc of scenes, and he really crafts shows in a particular way. Sometimes you'll be playing it and you'll be like, you'll deliver 2 lines and he'll pull the lights and you'll be like, that's the end of the scene. He goes, well, did you hear the laugh you got? I made it into a blackout. It was a 10 out of 10 laugh. You were never going to beat that. Mark was always right.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine waving off Mark and be like, no, we're going to keep playing. It just wouldn't happen here. It's
Well,
a
and
different
just
way of doing
to that point, like, there's a reason that you have a coach or a director, right? The importance of that outside eye is often understated, I think, when you're an improviser, because when you're in the scene, you're like, I'm in the middle of this artistic endeavor with a scene partner. We are 50% of this. However, it's kind of understood that you rarely, almost never, pull your own lights. So you have to have that understanding of, is it 50-50 or is it 40-40-20? Right? And then if you've got a musical director, that's something else, because a musical director is really going to help push that along of, hey, we're crescendoing here. Follow my lead, musical improviser who might be, again, an outside eye. If anyone here has ever coached or given notes, you know how easy it is to watch an improv scene and see it from the outside and see where you would take things. It's so much harder to do that when you're in it. It's almost impossible. So we have to also have a little trust that, oh, from the outside, you were in the audience, you could hear the vibe, you knew the time, you were listening to the musical director. I'm never going to wave those lights back up, because I would never do that to a director. Cut. No, we're keeping going. Excuse me? Like, what? So it's also letting go of that ego and saying, I thought this should have ended 5 minutes ago. And I've had so many Second City directors being like, they were with you. No, there was no laughs, but they were with you. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I could see their faces. I was in the crowd. I was watching them watch you. They were engaged. And I was like, but I was on stage. I didn't hear any laughter. I don't like that. I'm like, trust me, we're building towards something. So all of those outside eyes, they are so valuable. And I think when an ending happens that's either very satisfying or extremely unsatisfying, you have to know that it's not just you involved in the creation of this.
So you were on stage, you didn't hear any laughs, and that was surprising to you. That's what I heard.
Yeah. I don't usually attend Rob Norman shows, so I'm not used to the silence.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, usually people get really quiet after they've been laughing for an hour straight of me doing bits, so they need a break. Can't blame them. Gotta give them a
I'm
pause.
more
We
into
call that the
art and sharing
intermission.
it. Yeah, it's not bits that we do. It's creating art with other people. But if you want to do solo bits, that's great. Anyway, can we edit this conversation?
Great. Okay, so let's move to this next piece. We're talking about the perfect ending. What does a good ending feel like? When does it all come together? When do you go, ooh, that's a good ending?
Yeah, I mean, I think the ending that we're going to be most used to is ending on a heightening, funny laugh, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, this, especially in a long form setting, you're just like, oh, that scene was getting better. It was still getting better, and we ended it because most likely either those actors / characters are going to return, so we can't have them change yet. If these characters change, then they're kind of done for the show. So we usually don't see a long-form ending come as the result of a character change or a wrapping up of their story. It's still getting better. If you're doing a scenic scene, you're really looking for some kind of conclusion, some kind of wrap-up. A character has changed or learned something. The story arc has wrapped up. Any mystery has been solved. That really feels like you asked me to invest in this thing. You asked me to be a part of it by offering a suggestion, I watched it, and then you kind of just hung out would be not satisfying. So really saying, we watched this from start to conclusion, and it happened live in front of us, that conclusion is really going to make that ending satisfying. When you're talking about long form, and again, I will always go back to Seinfeld, the ending of a good Seinfeld, you just listen to the audience. They're screaming. They're gasping. They're not just laughing. They're shocked that all of these things that seemingly were random are all connected. And that makes you feel, from an audience perspective, you're rewarded for paying attention. Your time is valuable. You're smart for getting the connection. And it feels, from an audience perspective, very satisfying. At the same time, I think being on stage, being able to spot those connections and kind of multitask as an improviser and have the whole team be focused on one goal, which is, how do we combine these storylines? How do we bring any characters that we've already established back into the fold, wrap up their story, connect with other characters? That, if you've ever had the compliment, when did you write that? It's usually based on these kinds of endings. Connections, callbacks, story conclusion.
Right. And normally when people say that, it's a compliment. They're saying, oh, ahead of time, you practice this. This is more than just improvising it.
It's I don't believe that you could have improvised that. It was so well done.
But when people say, did you write that? And you say no, they go, oh, well, I'm teaching a writing class. Do you need help? So that's different. It's different in your context, but most of the time it's a compliment. Absolutely. And, when we're talking about this, you kind of mentioned connecting things together. That's one way to end things. And usually that would be best for a herald or a montage where there's a lot of stuff happening. You got to kind of wrap it all up. But something similar, the little brother of these big connections, these big Seinfeld moments that you're talking about, would just be something that I think about from Truth and Comedy. It's a Mike Myers quote at the beginning of the book where he says the end is in the beginning. And I think that's actually a very powerful tool just to end a scene. Just thinking back to that first line that you said, or the big theme that you said of this show, you've left it, you haven't touched it for the entire show, and now you're bringing it back. That usually is going to be the end. You've wrapped everything up. You've connected the beginning to the end. It's over. The loop is now full. Other ways that we might end this is just through brute force. More energy, more volume, bigger offers, bigger risks, bigger jokes. Ending through heightening is probably the safest way to do it. It's probably the easiest way to do it. We could also end this kind of emotionally, with some kind of emotional catharsis, some kind of turning point where a character learns a lesson or is emotionally changed. That would be Second City's kind of modus operandi of to creating these scenes where each scene feels like it is a reflection on a theme. That's a tool that you and I would have in our back pocket just from our years of doing Second City shows and directing Second City shows.
We the end is the beginning. It's so prevalent in so many other art forms, right? When you think of like a musical and that "I Want" song happens very close to the beginning, and it's like, this is our promise to the audience. This is what this character is going for, and I think we underestimate often the initiations to an improv scene and how valuable they can be, because we're often looking for like, what's the first funny thing, or what's something I can latch on to, and you're just saying things because you're on stage. Meanwhile, all of those things could be extremely valuable if we honor them, and when we do, they are so much there's so much potential in them. Because when we bring it back, the audience is like, yes, you promised us that was going to happen. You promised us that this is what the thesis of this scene was. Because otherwise, were you just wasting our time? Were you just saying a bunch of bullshit? But when we can initiate and say, this isn't funny or interesting or unique yet, but if we hold on and we build upon it, maybe we can show them that this is important to this character. This is important to this scene, as long as we don't abandon it.
And that's why it's so important for us to get our shit together in that first breath of the scene. Because when you're panicking or choking, or you're traumatized or you're shameful in that first moment, you're not remembering the first thing you said or did. You're just scrambling to try and find a lifeline here. And it's important that we slow everything down. We breathe through that first moment and we're present. We're completely present. No, I'm saying this now as being a veteran of doing this for 20 years and being completely dead inside. Some shows I do, I'm just like, I would love it. I would love it if I could feel something. Feel fear, feel anxiety. That would be a great little boost to my performance. But I'm just kind of going through the motions on this one. But yeah, if you can get your shit together and hold on to that first breath, that will be in your back pocket the entire show, and you can pull it out at any time to get yourself. It's like having a magical scroll, a teleportation scroll that ends the scene instantly. You zip off to another place. That first line you said will always be your way out. Very cool. And our way out of the first half of this is the break. Enjoy this ad. We're back, everybody. We're talking with my guest today, Adam Michael Cawley. He's been on a couple TV shows, mostly principal parts. We're talking about ending scenes, endings. Adam, often when you're performing on stage, people don't know that it's over because people aren't really aware that it's starting. I've seen you do scenes where people whisper, "Why is the stagehand on stage? Shouldn't he be moving chairs around?" Mm-hmm. And we go, "Oh no, he's actually the performer." And they go, "Oh, I didn't even notice him."
Master character work is what we call it.
Adam spent years getting his charisma so low, his stagecraft so low that no one even sees him. But you're in a scene, you're pushing for that ending. It's not coming. What are your options to get out? Is there a ripcord up that you could pull on this parachute to get you out of here? We talked about kind of the end is the beginning. Anything else?
I mean, there's always like, I think anytime someone says, "Well, anyway," that means the scene has no life left. There's often people being like, "Well, I gotta get going. Well, my ride's here." Those are all like classics.
But you can't say that to end a scene. You can't be in a scene and be like, "Oh no, the space empire is exploding," and you go, "Oh well, my ride's here," and then look to the side for them to edit you. You can't do that, can you?
But you absolutely can. I don't recommend it. I don't think it's a good idea. You asked what happens, and I'm telling you what I've seen happen. Which is people being like, "All right, well, we did it. I guess I got to go back to my home planet." We pull a Poochie. He's like, "I got to go back to my home planet now." Like, we're just setting up. This has ended, right? Wow, that was amazing. I'm so glad I shared that with you. Like, we're telling the audience and anyone who's responsible for editing us, I'd like to end this now. But look, and this probably comes, I'm probably saying this through, rose-colored glasses, whatever, of like, for me, it doesn't matter anymore, right? Like, unless the show is for some, like, an audition or something I'm extremely nervous about, it's like, I don't need to push towards an ending. Mm-hmm. If I push and it doesn't come, I'm just going to get frustrated, right? I'm trying to direct the scene from within. And it's not really helpful because now it's me against my other improvisers. And I don't like that feeling. So I think the majority of improvisers know, hey, it's not my responsibility. I'm going to do everything I can within the scene. But if the lights don't come down, and I've been in many a scene where they have not, maybe I don't know best. Maybe I got to trust that outside eye. What we used to do at Second City when we are writing a show, and just to recap for people who don't know, basically you've got a sketch show at Second City. Hour and a half sketch show. After that hour and a half, there's a free improv set where the cast, improvisers, guests come in. If you didn't have a ticket for that show, you could just come in and watch. When you are writing a Second City show, that improv set is used to showcase premises that you have 4 scenes. Once those scenes are workshopped enough in those improv sets, they replace scenes in the sketch show. And that's how you build a Second City show. So those sets are very valuable. And stage managers at Second City have this little trick. And once they get to see the shape of a scene, they will stop ending it where you want it to end. And they say, sorry, just taking away your life preserver. Oops, putting a few sharks in that water. What are you going to do? And sometimes it's absolutely painful because a scene that you think is 4 minutes goes on for 8 minutes and you hate yourself after. But sometimes your expectations go out the window. And what you have in your own head of what the design you have for where the scene is going is removed. And that's when it's pure discovery, pure fear, but in the best way of that fight or flight feeling of like, I need to do something. I need an anchor. And often it's your scene partner. Often it's returning to the premise or digging deeper emotionally than you had yet. And so feeling the safety net be removed from you live in the moment can often lead to some of the best improv you can do. I don't know the success rate of it, but the feeling of it can be exhilarating if you remove expectations and think, I have no idea what to do now. Like I don't know I don't know really where to go, but I'm still on stage. The lights are still on me. My partner's looking at me. I gotta find a way. And that stuff, I think, is that original improv feeling all of us felt when we were brand new of like, I don't know what to do, but I have to do something. So all of those things can be exhilarating and exciting, but they can also lead to a lot of frustration if you allow it. If you put your worth or your scene's worth on how it ends and your reliance on your teammates or your technical improviser to do that for you, and when you have a disagreement, like there's so many negative feelings that you can feel if you think you know best.
And for someone who is a professional improviser, you've traveled all over the world. You are an improv instructor for many different companies right now. Should I leave the scene by throwing a smoke bomb on the ground and then running off stage?
Yeah. There's lots of, I've seen improvisers shoot out the lights, like mime, pull out guns and shoot out the lights. I've seen people do the put your hand in the air and slowly bring it from your head down to your waist, meaning please lower the lights. I've seen some suicides. I've seen lots of things that people have forced an ending. And man, let's say you get your wish. I'm telling you, it's going to be unsatisfying. It's going to be, hey, smoke bomb, scene's over. Oh, okay. I guess we'll pull the lights on Adam. Okay. And everyone's like, that felt like nobody got what they wanted, crowd included.
To be clear, the smoke bomb move is like ninjas or like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. These ninjas would throw smoke bombs on the ground and then they would disappear. So we're talking about miming a smoke bomb and then you disappearing from the scene, which was something that was happening maybe for about 2 years. People were using that to leave bad scenes, and it was funny. I don't see it so much anymore. Maybe it's time to bring it back. Who knows?
No,
Who knows?
I don't think so.
Great. Very, very, very good. Are there any endings that you can think about that stuck with you? Memorable endings that you were on stage, you're looking out at the audience, and you went, "Oh, that was a good one."
going back to that Seinfeld idea of the screams, of like people getting the connection and their body just kind of convulses. It's like a sneeze, like they can't control it. It's just like, oh my God, I'm shocked that these things connect. That really is my goal for an ending. I love them. And it's like the laughs and the drama is for the scene, but the ending, I want people to be like, like, this is going to sound so bro-y, but the end of The Dark Knight, like, it gets me every time, of just Commissioner Gordon explaining to his son why Batman's doing what he's doing. It's like, there's not action in it. It's just a guy telling a guy about another guy. But anyway, I love endings just having a different emotional twist, a gut punch. So one of the shows that I did at Second City was happening during the G20 was in Toronto. And if you've ever been in a town or you've seen the news during a G20, it's massive protests. Massive. Like, cities are shut down. And Second City is in the downtown core in Toronto, right around the convention centers and everything. So the city was shut down. Like, I had to walk to work and show ID to what do you call it? Like riot gear police officers. Mm-hmm. Like, it was terrifying. So during that time, everyone in Toronto knew about it. Every Second City person had to deal with it. So that was our opening. We all came out as G20 officers with shields and batons, and we kettled the audience. And what kettling is a tactic by these officers where they surround you and slowly, inch by inch, force you into kind of a, what do you call it? Like a
box.
A box, and you're surrounded by officers. It's terrifying, and it was an awful time. But anyway, we decided to use it because what else can we do as artists and comedians? Hopefully satirize it. So we would kettle the audience and intimidate them comedically, but also a little bit of like, hey, isn't this a little terrifying? And you're in a safe theater. Mm-hmm. So we did all of that, and we used a sound cannon on them. We used water bottles to spray water on them. Then the show goes on. The ending, the show was a very political show, and the ending, we got to see the reverse. So we now became the protesters, and the audience became the officers. Mm-hmm. And we had a big spotlight, like a helicopter spotlight shining on us. We had audio cues of officers yelling at us, and we got to see both sides of this conflict. And then the very end of the show was them saying, we're going to kettle you. Like, we're coming after you. And we were like, no, please don't. Like, we looked terrified. And then you hear the sound of thousands of officers marching towards us. And then the lights shut out. And the audience was always like, and that was the end of the show. And I remember just feeling it was just such a satisfying feeling of not only the end and the beginning being that same, but there was also the heightening, there was the change. Like, there was so many aspects that we talked about today in that ending, and it was extremely satisfying for the audience and extremely satisfying for the cast. And I think it is just, whatever your show is, looking for those things. Can you make a connection? If so, I'd say make it. Can you bring back the beginning in the end? Yeah, absolutely. Can your characters change or learn a lesson or heighten to the point where they snap? Great. All of those things will help lead to a satisfying ending, because otherwise we're just kind of sitting in the muck waiting for a blow. And if that blow doesn't come, that muck gets murkier and murkier, and we are just now grasping for straws of funny dialogue lines so that someone will relieve us of the burden of being on stage.
That's really interesting. As you were telling that story, I was like drifting in and out of attention. But one of the things I was thinking about was how in that show that you described, which I have a very close relationship with, I probably have seen it probably like 40 times or something. I got to do your parts, I guess. I understudied for you. Is that show was really funny. It had a lot of big laughs in it, and also like a lot of scenes that toured. A lot of scenes in that show toured. I wonder if there would have been at any point in the end of this show trying to end on a bigger laugh than what we already had in that show. And now I'm thinking about like being a director and then being a cast member in a Second City show. Being a director of a Second City show can be hard on you because you kind of have different goals. The cast is so worried that they're not funny enough that they're just trying to squeeze out laughs from every moment. Every minute they're on stage, I want a bigger laugh. I want to know that I'm good. And for you as a director, your cast should get laughs. That's important. No one's a good Second City director if your show's unfunny and the show stinks. But people are evaluating you on the overall experience of the show, what it feels like to watch the show. And so sometimes that means you have to kind of like say, whoa, 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 too many laughs, which is challenging, right? You're kind of stopping what people want to do. But yes, I think sometimes we have to use something different than what the scene already is or what the show already is. So very funny shows, maybe we don't end on a big laugh. Maybe if your show was slower, more political, maybe you do want to end on a big laugh. Maybe, but not that show. Definitely not that show.
Yeah. It just, I think of anything that you like, right? We've talked about verse and chorus a million times. Chorus is the best part. Why not have it be all chorus? Well, because we'll get bored. What action movie ends on the explosion? No, the explosion's part of it, and then we probably have another 10 minutes of wrapping up storylines, wrapping up, making connections, seeing did we solve the thing. What? You have a question?
Fight Club. Fight Club ends with an explosion.
Fine. Talking about endings, when do we end this?
Oh, I thought you were doing trivia. I thought that was a real question, trivia.
No.
Okay, no.
No, didn't need any input.
Okay.
But the other thing is offering your audience and yourself something different. And knowing, hey, if this scene is extremely dramatic or extremely emotional, then those endings might just be, what can we offer that's dramatically different? I'm using dramatically as much as I possibly can. Mm-hmm. But if your scene is, a soft breakup, emotional scene, and you're thinking, I think I want to push towards that ending. What haven't we seen yet? What can we offer that's new and unique? If your scene is extremely funny, laugh per minute, well, ending on a laugh, you're kind of just replaying what we've already done. Mm-hmm. So whatever your scene is, quickly assessing, I think this is a very blank scene. Therefore, what haven't we seen? What won't we expect? And can we offer the audience a well-rounded meal rather than just, here's more steak? Like, we all like steak, sure, but do you want it again for dessert, or do you want something dramatically different to wrap up this meal?
Yeah, it's like, hey, we're all camping, time to go to bed, time to put out the fire, and I see Adam throwing little matches into the fire, being like, how does that put out the fire? It doesn't. Like, you can go grab water. That's something that's different. You could put gasoline on it. That would be interesting. That would maybe end the fire, probably not. There are things that we can do to change the state of the being of the fire, but just doing the same thing that we did at the start of it, hoping that we'll end it, probably won't. Mm-hmm. Giving more of what the scene already is probably isn't going to help you at all.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, Adam, any final thoughts about ending scenes?
Yeah, I think just the better you get at improv, I think the more you might be able to see what's coming and see where you think this scene is going. but we also, the better we get, have to be prepared to let all of that go. And I think the harder we push towards our vision, the more we're ignoring the people we're sharing the stage with. So it's scarier, but that's why we're doing improv, right? I have so many students who talk about like I just want to be really good. I want to get really good. And I'm like, I don't. The better like you want. If every scene you did was perfect, you'd hate improv. If you were guaranteed to kill it every single night, you would hate improv. What's the risk? Right? I'm a daredevil. Well, yeah, I use a net and a harness, and I'm only up 4 feet. It's like, well, then why do you want to be a daredevil? Well, thrill seeking. Do you feel thrilled? No. So knowing that you see an ending in sight, keep in mind it's just an option. It's one option of a million. And if you start to ignore the musical director, the tech director, your castmates, you are not improvising. You are trying to write the scene from within. You are trying to direct the scene from within. So seeing a potential ending is great. That means you're probably in a good headspace. You're well aware of everything that's been happening so far. And you see an ending. It's like is it a siren or a banshee who's like calling you to them of like, come to the ending. This will save your scene. And you think no one else can see what I see. I'm going to push towards it. But trust me, everybody is seeing a different ending. Everybody has a different idea of where this is going to go. And if everyone's pushing towards their own goal, you're going to have a fucked up ending. I think everyone needs to be like, yep, I see the option. I see that is there. But I'm also aware of what's happening here and now in front of me. And ideally, it'll be a little bit of all of our endings combined into something neither of us could have seen as an individual.
Yeah, so banshees are from Irish folklore. They use sound to kill you, so they would push you away. Sirens summon you. However, sirens summon you to rocks and they kill you. So both of these are probably bad analogies. Maybe you're thinking of the Fae, Irish fairies who bring you to the magical world. Maybe that's what you're thinking about.
No, I was thinking of banshees and sirens.
Okay, so we're moving on. It's the end of our season, AC. An incredible season, a great time. Nice to come back. We're going to take a break for the holidays, and we'll be back when we come back. But we have one final cool thing. I'll go first, and then I'll let you go second for the cool thing. So maybe 3 or 4 months ago, I did a panel at Fan Expo. It was about how to make podcasts. And so I'm there to talk about my podcast personal best and limited capacity. And so we're talking about it. But as we're talking about it, we had this conversation about community engagement. And so I just kind of like brought up Backline talking about what it was like to start with nothing and kind of fill out our podcast. But for the most part, I'm there to talk about these big podcasts that have a big budget and are publicized. Got 0 questions about personal best. Got 0 questions about limited capacity. One guy goes to the mic and goes, "Listen, man, huge fan of the Backline." And I'm like, it's not an improviser. It's someone who I've never met. And it's this guy named Hussein Panju from the Lawyered podcast. He's a real lawyer, and he brings on other lawyers to talk about it. And for whatever reason, he's like, Backline's one of my favorite. I listen to it all the time. And a couple weeks ago, he gave us a shout out about how excited he was about the Backline, about meeting me. And I felt like it's only fair. It's the holiday season. Got to give this fellow a shout out back to him. If you like legal matters, definitely check it out. Yes, I'm going to learn a lot about lawyers, I guess is what I'm saying.
So what's the name of the podcast?
It's called Lawyered. Like lawyer,
Lawyered.
ED. So
Cool.
if you want to get lawyered, it's great. It's actually kind of cool. You just get to learn about law. And like some of these episodes are very high-minded. If you want to go do a deep dive about what's happening in Canadian law, please do. And then others are easier to access. But it is basically the Backline for lawyers, which is really cool.
I love it.
That was my shout out.
That's so fun. Yeah, mine is actually another podcast called the Second Citizens podcast, and this is hosted by Second City Chicago alum Joe Canale, and it's just an interview podcast, but it's just about Second City and the community around Second City. So there's alumni that you will recognize because they're world famous. There's alumni from theaters you didn't even know they had, like a Second City Denver for a little bit. But it is, obviously I'm in this world a little bit, but I just find it so fascinating, the different paths people take to get their goals. And so if you are an improviser, whatever your goal may be, it's just really interesting. It's a cool podcast to check out because everybody has a different path. And when you feel like, oh, I didn't get on a team at this place, therefore I'm never going to reach my goal. It's like, nope. This is a great reminder that many people don't follow the path they thought they should and still end up with an incredible career or that disappointment leading to incredible innovation. So really cool, called The Second Citizens. There's over 100 episodes. I'll be on it in the new year, but you probably know everything about me from this already. But it goes all the way back, like Dave Thomas is on it, and all the way up to star of the podcast, Jason DeRoss will be on it soon. So check it out if you're interested in how people get to where they're going.
Yeah, one of our favorite podcasts coming up was We'll Be Right Back with Ruby Streak. When we were improvising, the musical director had a podcast. And it's interesting because at that time, it was folks like Mary Beth Monroe and, people who careers were just kind of starting out. And now those people are appearing on Joe's podcast on the other side of their career. They've kind of finished main stage. They're now in TV shows. They're starring in TV shows. That's really cool. And then you're also in it.
I actually just listened to Mary Beth's episode, and her journey is wild. Like, it's a wild journey that if someone said, hey, how do I get hired by Second City? I would not recommend her way at all because it seems impossible.
Right.
So it's really cool and really, I think, really affirming to know that you don't have to follow the path that others have. So yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, AC, have a great holiday, and we'll see you in the spring.
Nice. I'm going to push toward this ending now. I got to go.
Wait, your ending is you just talk slow and then say, gotta go.
Well, my ride's here. Gotta go. This has been a great journey. I'm calling the lights now.
Show me how to fight for now, and I'll tell you, baby, it was easy coming back here to you once I figured it out. You were right here all along, 'cause it's like you're my mirror staring back at me. I couldn't get any bigger with anyone else beside me, and now it's clear as this promise that we're making two reflections into one. 'Cause it's like you're my mirror staring back at me, staring back at me. Aren't you something, an original? 'Cause it doesn't seem merely as simple, and I can't help but stare, 'cause I see truth somewhere in your eyes. I can't ever change without you. You reflect me, I love that about you. And if I could, I would look at us all the time. 'Cause with your hand in my hand and a pocket full of soap, I can tell you there's no place we couldn't go. Just put your hand on the glass, I'll be trying to pull you through. You just gotta be strong, 'cause I don't wanna lose you now. I'm looking right at the other half of me. The vacancy that's out of my heart is a space, and now you're home. Show me how to fight for now, and I'll tell you, baby, it was easy coming back here to you once I figured it out. You were right here all along, 'cause it's like you're my mirror staring back at me. I couldn't get any bigger with anyone else beside me, and now it's clear as this promise that we're making two reflections into one. 'Cause it's like you're my mirror staring back at me, staring back at me. Yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery. I can see you looking back at me. Keep your eyes on me, baby, keep your eyes on me. Cause it's like you're my mirror staring back at me. I couldn't get any bigger with anyone else beside me. And now it's clear as this promise that we're making two reflections into one. Cause it's like you're my mirror staring back at me, staring back at me.